Okay, there we go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to try not to say my usual spiel on the sofa with Esther because this is a totally different format. Myself and this lovely young lady, Rianna, are going to be doing a podcast where old school meets new school. Rianna.
Yes, yeah. So welcome. I feel like this is a long-awaited thing that we need to do, because it's always good to bring new perspectives and learn from old perspectives as well. So
less of the old, less of the old.
Wise perspectives.
Okay, well, today we've got a very special guest, Nolan Jarret, from all the way, if we say all the way, in the US of A. And this young man, I've known this young man from way back. And he's always been an interesting young man. He's always been an out of the box young man and very just on a different level. And it's always refreshing when you meet other souls that you can have an individualistic conversation with. And I hope tonight, ladies and gents, that you will have your diary and your thesaurus available.
I'll try to keep the terms as simple as possible.
Rianna?
I agree, because yeah, you seem so amazing. I took a look at your profile and everything, and it's so like enlightening, and just want to learn more about it. But I completely agree. If you can break it down for us, I'd be truly appreciative. Yeah, so over to you. So yeah, give us a bit of a description perspective about yourself.
Sure. So I grew up in San Diego, California, and I come from a family of international travelers. So I spent a fair amount of my time as a kid traveling the world and seeing and interacting with different cultures. And that really kind of formulated my worldview fairly early on, to acknowledge and understand that, the world is a lot bigger than just your hometown.
Absolutely.
So that obviously kind of laid the foundation for me. I would say that now really my passion for the past several years has really just been future technology and future possibilities, and really kind of examining what it is that makes us human and what it is that actually enables us to overcome certain limitations that we have using new technologies. And so a few years ago, when I was studying philosophy at University of California, Santa Barbara, which is a beautiful school on the West Coast. And during my time there, I really had some opportunities to study and talk with a lot of scientists at the Institute of Theoretical Physics on campus. And one of those scientists was actually a Nobel Prize winner in physics. And so I had a lot of really cool conversations with this gentleman, Professor Gross, and he really helped me to understand the connection between nature and the laws of physics and how that goes into developing new technologies, new capabilities. And so for me, that's when it kind of, I formed the axiom for all my future work, which was the idea that technology is natural and that nature is technological. And so that really kind of forms the foundation of my thinking about the future. And really what I decided to do kind of after college was I really wanted to create a digital platform dedicated to exploring that premise, dedicated to exploring the idea of technology being natural and nature as being part of a technological ecosystem. And so my work today is through the SineoFlux NextGen platform, which I founded, is really designed to be an international technology consultancy to work with clients to help them see that that first idea that technology is natural, but then beyond that, how do you leverage new capabilities? What are the opportunities and what are the dangers? That's really what my work focuses more on today.
Brilliant. In a nutshell, nutshell, really well put and said. But then, Nolan is a speaker anyway, especially when he's passionate about something, and that you did that very eloquently.
Oh, thank you.
Well,
yeah. So,
yeah.
Oh,
I can follow on. Okay.
I think we're breaking up a little bit, but I can. There's a bit of glitching. But yeah, no, it sounds amazing completely. And there are certain things that you touched on that definitely want to dive into if you can, or if you can share certain details with us. I think specifically your comment on like trying to discover what actually makes us human. That's
absolutely
like very deep.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have found any like interesting things about that perspective, or whether there's anything you can share with us, because I know it's a project obviously, and it's probably a lot of stuff that you can't divulge in right now, but I don't know if there's anything you can share with us with that statement, because that's powerful.
Yeah, of course. And I'm always happy to share my view on this. So I would say that just in general, one of the things that I'm really fascinated by is what's kind of going to drive the next technological revolution. And to me, in order to answer that question, I really had to delve deep into, okay, fundamentally, what makes us human? One of the main universal characteristics that I've been able to identify is the fact that it seems like most people all over the world have an impulse to want to capture the world, understand the world, and then share their experiences with others. And that seems to be a kind of foundational axiom, like a starting point for everything in our world, whether you're talking about the wireless internet, whether you're talking about social networking, or just community engagement. All of it fundamentally for me comes down to this desire to want to capture our experiences and share those experiences with others. And so for me, a big and exciting field that I'm looking into now is something called spatial computing. Which basically has to do with combining different sets of technologies together to enable new ways for users all around the world to share and communicate information. For example, even a platform like Zoom. Zoom was a really transformational platform in enabling what we call telepresence technologies. So it's a technology that we're using right now. It's users who are geographically in multiple locations are able to meet in a shared virtual space where they can then exchange information. So for me, kind of that trying to understand that fundamental quality of what is about people that makes us want to capture and share our experiences, that for me is what forms the foundation of so many of these technologies. Because on some fundamental level, you know, what's the first thing you think when you hear a cool new song? It's like, oh my God, I love this song. Like my best friend would love this song. Or like, I wonder how this person loves this song.
Yeah.
You know, so in many ways, it kind of feels like if technology had a purpose, it would seem like one of its main purpose would be to allow people to capture and share experiences. So that's kind of one of the fundamental views that I feel, characteristics or qualities that makes us human.
Okay, but if I can sort of then take that a little deeper, I mean, you're talking about the shared experiences from a technological perspective, but then I guess when you strip things away in terms of your, what you talk, when you mentioned the concept that technology is natural and nature is technological. So then if you put it in that sort of context, you think, you know where I'm going with this, if you put it in that sort of context, then how do you define that that strapline, you know, what makes us human, to the sentence about technology is natural and nature is technological?
Yeah, so that's a really excellent
diaries
question.
out, people, get your diaries and do all sorts.
Yeah, that's actually a really excellent question. So for me, one of the axioms of my work, like you just stated, is this idea that nature is technological, therefore technology is natural. So the question is, okay, how do human beings fit into that narrative, if you will? So one of the ways I look at it is I think that in many ways, living beings like human beings, as well as the animals that, you know, occupy the ecosystem that we're all a part of, I feel as though we're in a symbiotic relationship with nature, right? So we rely on the natural world for the resources that sustain us. But in turn, we also develop tools and technologies that allow us to alter the natural environment to better suit human needs. And that's a big concept that's emerging now, is the idea of the smart ecosystem or the smart environment, which is embedding technological interfaces and systems that can basically are responsive to people, that people can talk to these systems, they can understand what you need, they can design customized profiles based on preferences, moods, etc. So the question of how do we kind of fit into that ecosystem is, I see the relationship as being symbiotic. And I feel as though different periods of human history are largely defined by the kinds of technologies that we have available, right? And we've seen a pretty clear progression throughout history. You know, way back in the day, it was the Stone Age because we were using stones, you know.
Are you being rude, young man?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember that?
And you know, it's obviously there's a progression, right? And then eventually we use more sophisticated tools over time. But I think you know, fundamentally, I think that nature in many ways is an intelligent ecosystem, and I think that we need to be able to look to nature's example to solve a lot of really difficult challenges. And something that I've noticed recently is a big topic is like AI and AI research. A lot of the solutions that come from AI are based on something called decision trees, right? I mean, they literally use the term tree, but it's a mathematical structure for how a system learns to make decisions, right? And so if we can look at nature and say, nature is a technological system, then what we'll start to notice is that our human societies will look more futuristic the more they look like nature, because nature already figured out all the things that we're trying to solve. And so I think that those two things are connected.
It makes sense now you've put it in that context, because nature is incredibly intricate and complex. But then when the way you've presented that, I had that aha moment because I could literally visualize what you were intimating. And then I guess that then, by the way you've put it, it therefore takes away the complexities of what a lot of us think it really is. Is that making sense?
Yeah, of course. And a really cool, exciting field. It kind of originated in architecture and design. It's the field of algorithmic computing. So what a lot of designers are doing these days is, you know, a lot of really, like London, for example, has some pretty iconic buildings, some pretty iconic architectural structures there. And something that designers have been exploring for a couple of years now is algorithmic computing, which is basically using algorithms or computer formulas to generate shapes and form and predict, you know, the user experience. And they've literally figured out a lot of really insightful things. Certain color schemes, certain lighting features can make an environment feel more inviting versus certain building materials. You know, like when you, and a lot of these things are largely subconscious too, but like when you walk into an abandoned brick building, you kind of feel a little uneasy, like just in the sense of like, it's like an older structure, you know, it kind of has this like void feeling. You see this like really like cool futuristic like lighting system and you're like, wow, like it feels more inviting, you know. So there's psychology involved in design, but a lot of these concepts are algorithmically based. They are formulas from nature that we use to design smarter systems. And that's basically a huge aspect of my research.
Okay, excellent.
That sounds amazing. I think one of the things that I would like to like ask you about as well is because you mentioned the virtual servers. So where people would meet in one place and exchange ideas. Now, one thing when you mentioned that, I don't know if I've misinterpreted it, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I always think about Black Mirror. I'm not sure whether you've come across that show where...
It's so hilarious. I have a note. I was like, I need to ask them about Black Mirror and another show, The Feed, but we'll get to that. Yeah.
To you, Rianna.
It's because there's a lot of people that might show a bit of hesitancy about something like that. So when you watch Black Mirror, it kind of talks about the evolution of technology, but they're dependent on who is in charge, sort of thing, or the motives. It can become quite a dark side of future. So With mine personally, I love your ideas with regards to like how it can help design certain buildings and stuff like that. I think that's amazing. But I'm just with regards to like the mixing of the mind and technology, I think that's where I'm a bit hesitant for. So I don't know whether, do you feel like there's a dark side to the futuristic AI merge of like humanity and technology, or yeah.
Well, first of all, Rianna, thank you so much for asking that question. I was really hoping you would, because it was literally part of my notes. So I'm glad that we're touching on this point now. In answer to your question, yes, absolutely. A big aspect of Flux Next Gen as a technology consultancy is really to identify not only the opportunities, but also the dangers of emerging technologies, because in many ways, if technology is just an extension of the human mind, then by its definition, it can be either good or evil, right? So, I mean, these are very, very old issues that humanity has struggled with. And there's a lot of implications for it. Black Mirror is a really interesting show, and it is a show that I've been watching for a number of years now. Basically, that is the running theme throughout the show. It's an anthology, right? So every episode is different, discusses a different theme or a different concept. But the basic theme is don't be so not just overly dependent, but overly optimistic about new technologies, because generally speaking, just like in every good movie, like there's probably some villain who has some nefarious motive for this technology, right? So yes, these are definitely things that I think about. One of my favorite shows of 2019 was actually, it was an Amazon Prime original that was based in the UK, and it was called The Feed. And basically it was like if Black Mirror, instead of being an anthology, was a 10-part series, basically. And I don't know if either of you have had a chance to see that show, but basically, in a nutshell, the idea is it's set in a near future London. So like London, maybe like 2030. And at that time, a very prominent inventor named Lawrence Hatfield develops what's called the Feed, and it's basically a brain-computer interface system. So it's like what we call a neurotechnology. So it's a technology that connects people's thoughts directly to computers. And obviously, it starts out really cool at first, but as you can predict, it quickly deteriorates and things quickly go downhill. So that show to me really opened my eyes, because that one, it's only maybe 2 years old, but it shows like a lot of the real dangers, especially when you're dealing with technologies that connect people's thoughts to computer systems. That is a very it's a very tricky territory, but there are a lot of warnings in that show. And I feel as though if we can at least acknowledge the potential dangers, a lot of those dangers can be potentially mitigated. But a lot of those themes have been around a very long time. The UK, US, by and large, are still very stratified societies, right? There are lots of different demographics. Some demographics have a lot of money and influence, others not so much. Like you said, the goal is to use these technologies to make society more inclusive, but that's not always the case. So to kind of summarize, if I can, yes, I've definitely thought about all of those things, and there is always a dark side to technology, but technology is a tool, and it's really about how human beings choose to use that tool. So that's why I really like to quote another futurist, Gerd Leonhard, when he says, humanity, then technology. You have to have that basic sense of like affection and humanity for other people if you want to have technology be a good thing. Otherwise, technology will just be bad. It'll just make 100%. Things worse, not better,
100%. Firstly, I'd like to just thank you for explaining Black Mirror to some of the oldies here who may not have, because I realized that as I said that.
I know where you live. That's good, because this platform is a learning platform, the integration of you millennials and us oldies, as you keep saying. It's a platform. No, I'm cool with it. It's a platform for learning. And I've learned so much from listening to you, Nolan, and also sometimes it takes for someone to describe the process of something for us to have that bigger understanding of what it is, and for your input as well, Rianna. And I guess another question, Nolan, that's coming to me is, have you always been interested in this, I would say, domain? Because it's very deep, it's very technical, it can be seen as quite complex. So, how did you enter into this sort of field of inquiry?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. So it's hard to define exactly when my interest in futurism or these concepts kind of began. But I'm definitely a firm believer in the fact that your experiences throughout your life will largely shape the kind of person that you become. And so for me, like, I was always really fascinated by trying to understand how things work. Just on some basic level, there's just, maybe it's just erudition, maybe it's just the way my brain's wired, but I would just look at things and be like, well, how does that work? How does this fit with that? And when it came to kind of future technology, I always had a really cool interest in design. So I was always really interested in like what buildings and like cityscapes could look like in the future, and things of that nature. And then throughout college, when I started to meet with other students, a lot of them were international students, like some good friends of mine from Norway, for example, and they were studying these really complicated fields like cybernetics and computer science and all these things. And I was just kind of asking them, like, what will these, you obviously are investing a lot of time and energy because it's very difficult to be able to go into these fields. So like, what's kind of the end goal? What's the benefit? They're basically like, these systems will be the foundation of everything in the future, And then I was like, oh, okay, so maybe that is worth something, worth looking into. So for me, I think it's more just a natural curiosity towards life and towards things that are happening in the world. And I really don't necessarily ever want to be in a position where I'm being caught off guard by changes that are happening in the world, because the world is changing all the time, and technology is a big driving force behind that. And so for me, it was just always this desire to kind of want to be one step ahead of tomorrow. It's like, I want to know the forces that are going to impact the world, and I want to position myself close to those things so that through my work, I can also have a positive impact as well.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Rianna, we've got probably about another five minutes here. It's funny because I know I said Rianna, but I another question that came to me is then you said you always want to be in front of, ahead of. So what can you tell us now in terms of where technology is and what's going to happen maybe over the next few months from your research?
Yeah,
I'll be coming to you to find out. You'll be like my crystal ball.
Just like Larry Ellison and Oracle. Yeah, absolutely. So the way kind of I do projections is in different time frames. So 12 to 24 months in the future is generally within the tactical time frame, and then anything beyond that becomes like strategy and vision. So I would predict, honestly, within the next few months is a couple different things. These future trends, generally speaking, are usually context dependent, so it's going to be different in different places. For you both operating, in the UK, I would imagine that there's going to be an increasingly virtualization of services will be my most reasonable projection, because obviously what's happening with the lockdown, it's the logic behind it seems logical right, on some level, but it's also going to create some sort of negative feedback loops as well. Yes. So on the one hand, like the basic theory is, okay, if we enter these higher level tier restrictions, less human contact, less chance to spread a virus. So, okay, fine. But with that rationale, that means that people are still going to need certain services and things done. And on some basic level, like we were talking about earlier, communicate and share with each other. So I would imagine that over the next few months, services will become increasingly virtual. So less in-person meetings. It'll probably be more platforms like this, Zoom.
Yeah.
A big concept is telepresence, which is basically what we're doing now. Multiple users in different locations meeting in a shared virtual space. And I predict that that's probably going to continue, at least for the foreseeable future. Like I said, the UK is in a rather interesting position, just because the first country in the history of the EU to leave, with the whole Brexit situation, plus like with all these new restrictions. It's going to be a very uncertain time, but the most logical thing is things become more virtual. The government, with all the restrictions, they're not going to want people interacting physically as much. And that's going to be tough, especially just because, like we said, people just want to go out and have a good time. But as long as they think it's a credible threat, then they're probably going to continue with restrictions, at least for a while. So that would be my logical conclusion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's really nice that you're in Colorado. You can go out and, enjoy yourself. You're talking about the adventures you're having there at this moment in time. So that really makes us feel really great being locked down.
Yeah.
It's nice. I mean, like our house here is just right next to a really nice trail. So this trail extends out kind of into nature, and we do mountain hikes once a week. So I'm sorry, I just, being outside is a big part of me. Like, it's crazy because I wish you guys could be here. Maybe I could be in London, because I don't mind like all this virtual stuff. But if you want to be in nature, you should be here in Colorado.
Okay, well, you'd have to virtually take us with you and predict something around.
I'll definitely swap.
So in winding down, Rianna, is there anything else that you'd like to share with Nolan?
I think I just have one final question. It's kind of like a hopefully uplifting thing that you can help answer, is because we mentioned earlier with regards to nature being more technological and technology being more natural. For me, if I take on my experience, I find, because for me, nature, I really connect with nature. That's something that I think I would say that with my spirituality, that helps me connect. So kind of like connecting with what we discussed earlier, with those who might be more skeptical, or like those who may be more spiritual and find nature as that way of connecting, or like we were saying with regards to the pandemic, the lack of connection, the lack of human interaction, and us heading more into this virtual reality. Is there anything that you would like to say to those who are more like skeptical or more do you think spirituality and technology can coexist with one another, or is there something that you would just like to reassure people who are afraid of going down this road? Yeah, I don't know whether that that was too much.
No, it was just the right amount. So thank you, Rianna. That's a really important question. So for me, I may actually be in the minority. A lot of more futurist and people operating in technology, society can be reduced to just codes and algorithms. I'm different. For me, my priority actually is kind of spirituality and spiritual growth, and that expresses itself differently for different people. For me, spirituality has to do with connecting, not just to nature, but also to each other. So a big aspect of that is, for me, is the idea of the intelligent ecosystem, right? So a big aspect, and this is actually one of the divisions of NextGen, is something called integrated systems. So it's about combining sets of different technologies in a new way. And so for me, how that really ties in to spirituality is something that I experienced when I was in Japan a few years ago, because Japan, for example, has one of the most technologically advanced societies in the world, but Japan also has a very long history of spirituality. And there are a lot of East Asian influences there, like Buddhism and Shinto. And, they believe that nature has intelligence and willpower. And, these are actually ideas that shape my view about the future. And in answering to your question, I don't think that technology and spirituality are mutually exclusive. I think that the only way we can benefit from technology is if there's a spirituality or a spiritual element involved there. Because something that I think about all the time is that, like, even if you create a technology that solves problems, right? Let's say in London, they figure out a way to alleviate traffic congestion by building automated highways, right? That would be great. That'd be a great solution, no more traffic. But at the same time, like, if people are still just driving around using up all their life energy in these hollow pursuits, then ultimately the technology didn't make society any better. Right. So for me, like that whole spiritual question is very important, because it's really it kind of comes down to like finding that inner peace and that inner stability in whatever form it takes. Right. And I think that to live ethically, to live in harmony with each other and to develop an ecosystem that is intelligent and responsive and puts the needs of people first instead of using people to serve its own agenda. That to me is the fusion between technology and spirituality.
I 100% agree with you. I think technology can be so beautiful. It can make our lives so amazing. Like you said, there's so many ways that it can be used to help solve all these problems that we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. Even like there's water sources in certain particular countries, like using technology, you could be able to figure out where exactly to pinpoint and stuff. So it can be amazing, even like solving diseases. It's just like what we discussed earlier with it needs to have that spiritual element. I think it needs to have humanity first. Otherwise, it can go down quite a dark, if we just rely heavily on algorithms, where we're just looking at what people think sort of thing, then it essentially could be the technology running humanity, where really it needs to remain humanity owning technology. And I think that's what we need to keep pushing.
Exactly. And that's and that's a really great point. And so I'm glad that you kind of understand where I'm coming from with that. Just kind of to summarize, because like in a lot of ways, that's really a really important issue to me is really that that relationship with nature. And for me, something that I've noticed is that it seems like one of the main social paradigms, or one of the main ideas, right, that modern societies are based on is basically what I call like the economic growth theory model, which basically, simply put, looks something like the following. Humans are here to work. Earth is a resource. Yes. Economic growth is the purpose of society, right? That's a very dangerous idea to base your society on. And we're seeing the negative ramifications for that all of the time. One of my favorite UK-based thought leaders is actually Russell Brand. And I watch his podcast all the time.
I watch him too, actually.
Dude, Russell Brand's so awesome, because like he's just one of my favorite guys to listen to. Yeah. But you know, like he says it more British. He's like, humans are here to work. The earth is a resource. Not
you actually do a good impression of
it. But it's funny because he's like, basically on a deeper level, what people and thought leaders like yourselves in different societies around the world, one of the things that we should really be focusing on is basically what you said. It's reprioritizing what we put our energy and our resources into, right? Because if you prioritize like an economic system, then what's logically going to follow from that is that the society will essentially just become employees serving an economic system, right? And that's exactly what's happening in America and all over the world. And it just sees the earth as a resource. We need to shift away from that kind of view and saying, the earth isn't a resource. Like, human beings are here to live, to experience joy and love and all of these things, right? And that should be the priority. And technology can solve a lot of these issues, but you need to understand where your priorities kind of lie, you know? And it seems like, if anything, one of the dangers of the direction the UK society has taken has been to take that economic approach instead of taking that humanity first approach. And so that's one of the things that I think you guys could have a really positive impact on doing, is really just on some basic level reminding people that, you know, the purpose of life isn't to work. You know, work is an aspect of life, but technologies are actually here to make life what it was always meant to be, which was like a fun, pretty much like a game world where we can have all sorts of cool experiences. You know?
Yeah. Technology can definitely be very freeing or very trapping, depending on the direction we take. And yeah, more people like us clearly need to be in power, because then we will make sure that it's freeing.
But then I know we were supposed to be winding this down, but you mentioned you mentioned specifically the UK. Why do you feel the UK is operating differently from, say, the US in terms of that model that you've just spoken about? Because for me, I see that model operating globally.
Right. So I was just kind of trying to provide more some context to the point I was making earlier, but you're absolutely right. The model does operate globally. I would say that the US, the UK, and really more industrial Western societies are largely the ones that create these economic models, which then get exported to the rest of the world. Absolutely. Right. So that the idea, therefore, is that societies like the UK and like the US have enormous influence, because if they can, depending on what economic or political paradigm they choose, a lot of countries around the world are going to emulate that to some degree, right? And so something that I think about a lot, and this kind of goes to show how technology is viewed different ways in different places, is, for example, a technology that I'm researching now is, it's called like facial recognition softwares and scoring systems. So this is a big problem in the US right now, because basically there are companies like HireView that use AI algorithms to basically monitor people's like facial expressions when they're doing interviews and things like that, and basically scoring people, right? The problem with a scoring system technology is that it innately will have bias, because these systems are developed by people, and even AI systems, they need data sets to learn, right? So if they're learning from the internet or sources like that, they can pick up bias that is already there, right? And so that's a big danger. But in San Francisco, for example, people in San Francisco do not like facial recognition. They voted saying we don't want it in our city. Then on the other hand, you have a city like London, which is one of the most surveilled cities in the world, and they have CCTV cameras and facial recognition everywhere. They even give people some fines before the pandemic for covering their face. Now they're telling everyone to wear a mask. So there's obviously some discontinuities there. So the reason I kind of just brought up the UK is basically it's just because these societies have a lot of influence in exporting their model to the rest of the world. So it is a global issue, but but cities like London, San Francisco, even Denver now have more influence in shaping how society is going to respond to it.
Okay, brilliant. Well, this has been deep and rich, and for me, I mean, you'd have to tell me about that show that you watched afterwards.
It's on Amazon Prime. It's like, it is literally like an extended episode of Black Mirror. Like, it goes in, it's a very realistic depiction of how unlikely a positive outcome would be if we had thought communication technology today. Like, it really is, because like, it's not, you really want to be optimistic about it. To me, when I first saw the episode, I'm like, this is so cool. Like, they have devices where they can like think to each other, and then it quickly just goes downhill. So it was a warning for sure.
Dip in. And in winding down, Rianna? Do you want to say?
I just I wanted just to say one more thing. I'm so sorry. But just with regards to the facial recognition, I think this kind of plays into the part where I think the fact that a lot of countries, like you mentioned London, and in certain parts of America where they're focusing on the facial recognition, I sometimes feel as though that is a way of us going down the wrong path, because really and truly that is something that makes us human, being able to pick up the empathy or understand where we really connect. But then when we start to rely on technology, are we separating ourselves again? And with like one of the episodes on Black Mirror, it has the social crediting system where people were marked on certain things, and I know something like that is happening in China right now.
Exactly. I know what episode you're talking about too, and China's doing the same thing. Like,
yeah, they're starting to do that.
Because it's funny because like personality wise, like there's a part of me that like understands why like they want to create these things, but at the same time I'm just so not down with a lot of like what you're saying.
It's getting to a dangerous level. And
exactly, because basically when you think about it, like in a lot of ways the idea behind a lot of these things is it's not even necessarily designed to help the people, right? It's designed to help like the companies or the governments that try to manage those populations. And so basically a scoring system, you know, that can influence like everything, you know, like in China, for example, if you're loyal to the party and, you know, say and do all the right things, you get a high score, you know, your life's taken care of. But if you step out of line, then it'll literally be as easy as pressing a button. And they have a formula, you're blacklisted, and then you're on a list of undesirable people. You know what I mean? Like all the issues that have happened throughout human history those issues are still with us. The only difference now is that with technology, we can either come up with solutions or it can make those issues worse. So I'm personally not an advocate of like scoring systems, but I mean, naturally, like we want to try to organize people, right? We want to say, oh, you can do this and this, so you fit here. You have this skill, so you can go there. So we want to try to organize society, right? But it's not, I'm not convinced that scoring is a good way of doing that.
It's quite, it does sometimes feel a bit concerning, because for those who don't know, in China, well, especially if you haven't watched the Black Mirror episode, but like Nolan said, they have started developing a community where you're basically scored. So they've allowed their personal information to be uploaded and trackable. So they track everything that's on what you search for, everything. And then that kind of influences what privileges you get. Like say, if you get certain discounts with travel, and if you don't comply, you're blacklisted and they can kind of cut you off completely. So I think that's one of the things, like, are we ready? Because like you said, in history, we've gone through certain things. There's been wars, there's still tension amongst countries. Technology can be so beautiful, but without the right mindset, it can be very worrying for the average person. That I think this is an amazing conversation, and we can go on for ages.
Part two, you can always do part two again as well.
Yeah, definitely.
If you
I'm really happy. I'm really excited to do that. It's been a lot of fun for me. Like I said, to be honest, we like even barely scratched the surface. I mean, these concepts, they have a very real impact on the kind of world that we'll live in. You know, that's why it's so important that people actually think about it. Because if you don't, then it doesn't go away. It just means that someone else is going to make that decision for you. You know, but overall, like I'm really happy. I'm really optimistic too, because one of the main things, because like to be a futurist is really interesting, because like on the one hand, it takes two very different approaches. On the one hand, you have to be willing to see the world for what it is. But at the same time, you have to be able to imagine what it could be. And you need both in order to actually change the future. So like, I see the issues and stuff with technology, but I'm still optimistic that at least if we can get our mind right, then technology can be used in a positive direction. At least that's how I would choose to use it.
This might be a good way to sum up then, because you mentioned that you can see a very positive future with technology. Are you able to describe, just to give that nice happy vibe of how the direction that technology could come as a futurist, the future that you see with technology, the positive outcome?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, like a very positive outcome would be a social model that has to incorporate nature and what I call this emerging field called biomimetic design. So it has to do with creating a more sustainable human settlements. So our buildings, our roads, our cities, even our airplanes, you know, and transport systems, using a biomimetic design, it basically means looking to nature to find the most effective design principles, right? So this can be used from pretty much everything, you know, like beehives, for example, they use certain geometric shapes that are very effective. And architects have actually replicated that in buildings and have made buildings more energy efficient. Or you look at, you know, the future of air travel and how designers now are experimenting with triangular shapes, basically making airplanes more like flying wings, which would increase like the user experience because there's more space in the airplane, but the airplane's also more comfortable. So the experience is cooler. Or making ships that are more hydrodynamic that look like dolphins and use like really advanced, you know, geometries and stuff. So in a very optimistic scenario would be that we return back to nature to find the hidden design principles that can make our society more integrated, because that's the only way that societies can work. Is a lot of things have to come together. You know, you have to, and you know the.
Oh no, have we lost him?
No.
Oh.
It was just winding down rather nicely.
Oh no. I guess we can re-edit it, but hopefully he comes back. Oh,
Nice.
that was so good.
Okay, I'm going to pause the recording.
But yeah, okay.
Right, I've just resumed recording. So you were sort of winding that down with.
Oh yeah, optimistic future is we come up with really cool designs, designs in spaces that
oh no.
New kinds of virtual and real environments so that people can communicate across different distances and be in different locations, and overall just prioritizing purely economic approach, right? So that's kind of optimistically things that I'm hoping for.
Brilliant.
Sounds good. Definitely a future I would want to live in. Definitely.
And leave your details, Nolan. You know, where can people get hold of you, find out more about the work that you're doing?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So my digital platform is called syneofluxnextgen.com, and on there I have videos talking about some of my concepts about the future, and that's a really good introduction to me and my work. I also have some written articles on there as well. And there's also a link to like a digital art gallery and a lot of cool stuff as well. So on that website, people will be able to contact me, and everyone who checks out the platform and subscribes or contacts me, I always take the time to write them back and write a personal thank you. So yeah, Syneoflux Next Gen is definitely the place to see all my work. And a really cool thing is if you know people like in different countries, I'd feel free to share with them as well, just because I have like a world map of all the places where the site's being accessed and stuff. And so I have a really big presence in the States, but also in Europe as well, and a couple in South America. So just trying to fill up that whole world map. Thoughts.
You want to travel with Rianna? We don't just want to travel with you virtually. We need to be there.
Yes, 100%. I'm down.
Yeah, no, if you guys want to make a trip to Denver, we're like 10 minutes from the airport. It's a really fun city. So when everything hopefully loosens up a little bit in Heathrow and the UK and you can kind of travel, then Denver's a really fun city, and be more than happy to show you around.
Fantastic. Okay, that's a deal. Well, thank you so much. I've learned so much from you both as well. I need to go and check out the Black Mirror.
Yeah, and the feed, that's the other one. That's on Amazon Prime.
I need to check that one out. Yeah, I haven't seen that.
What's that one?
The feed. Yeah, it's like a Black Mirror. It's like a 10-part series, but it takes place in the UK. So.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you, Rianna. Thank you, Nolan. And there's definitely going to be part 2 or part 3 or part 4. Less of the oldie next time, girl. But, we can, because even from this, there's so much more that I can sit and listen because each aspect had a part that you could pull out and make into this bigger realm. And as I've written notes, so we will definitely do a part 2, and then we can field those new questions in. And maybe next time we can have it in front of an audience, invite people on. So it might be a Facebook Live where you can get people actually fielding questions and having that interaction and getting that awareness. As
definitely,
they bring their thesaurus and dictionaries. Yeah, we'll have
a Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. I was really happy to do this this first interview, because I'm still somewhat new to the Zoom platform, but it's definitely a great way to video conference. So
brilliant.
Definitely.
Brilliant.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Been amazing.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for seeing my home. I got my bamboo tree here in the back.
I've noticed. I love what you've got in the background. Yes, we're coming, Nolan. Don't you?
You might regret saying that as well.
And you said it live. So they're recorded. So you can't go back on
we'll
that.
rock up one day. It's just like, we're here.
Hey.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. All right. Well, you have a fantastic day. You go out and do your adventures now. Show off. And you just keep doing what you're doing. Really proud of you. Really proud. And that's now I'm showing my age, okay? But yeah, I'm really proud of you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I did some recent updates to the website, so check it out when you get a chance. Let me know what you think.
Okay, brilliant.
Definitely will.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you. Esther and Rianna, old school meets
new school.
Awesome. I love
All
it.
right. Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.